and welcome to the Farmstead Forum Podcast, your southern hub for all things homesteading. Come grow with us today while we explore the world of wild foods and herbs for your homestead. I'm your host, Emily Faulkner, and today we're diving into the fascinating practice of foraging. We'll be talking about 6 incredible herbs you can forage and the essential tools and reference books to guide you on your foraging journey. Remember, for pictures and visuals of the herbs we discussed today, check out our YouTube channel for the accompanying PowerPoint presentation. Let's get started and uncover the wild treasures waiting just outside your door. Stay tuned. Come grow with us today as we learn from Suzanne Shires about foraging herbs and seeing what we can eat this time of year. Suzanne is a North Carolina native, homesteader and author, and a master herbalist. She calls the Blue Ridge Mountains home. Suzanne grew up with Appalachian mountain remedies and developed a deep interest in herbalism and whole food nutrition. Her education included foraging edible plants and medicines, fermenting, winemaking, creating homemade vinegars, seasonings, and herbal remedies. Welcome back to the podcast, Suzanne.
Hi, thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so we are talking about what we can forage and eat today. Is that right?
That's right. There's so much available right now, so much available. We can, if you're looking for food, there's so many ways to use it. You know, fruit comes in the summertime, so much fruit, and everybody, I'm sure, has harvested at least one blackberry. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's just so much available right now, and there's still leaves and greens and roots and other vegetables too. And we can talk a little bit about those and how to harvest some of those, if you'd like.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I can give you a few examples of some things that are coming available now through late July and then into the 1st of August. This is the heat of the summer. As I said, fruit is abundantly available, whether you're looking at wild places like fields and forests or parks. Any place that has wild, looks like what would be weeds, is usually a place that you're going to find some wild food. And I encourage everybody to grow wild food in their yard, in their garden. I have this one presentation where I talk about wild food. As a matter of fact, I did it this past weekend at East Tennessee Homestead Alliance. I talked about the wild food that was in my domestic vegetable garden. I had corn growing, and right beside corn, I had lamb's quarter. If you don't know what lamb's quarter looks like, go look, write it down, go look it up. It's wonderful spinach. It's called wild spinach. Well, in my garden, I would have lamb's quarter growing right along the corn. In the tomatoes, I would have bee balm and things like that like the water, that also has an oregano and a basil taste. So I'll talk about some of those too, how you can do that. But don't be afraid to allow some wild food to grow in your vegetable garden as well as your flower gardens, because there's some beautiful flowers, wildflowers growing. One of the first ones, do you want me just to go on and continue and start and then tell you some of the things that you can harvest now?
Sure. Give us some a few things that we can find this time of year.
All right. I did pull up some pictures so that you can kind of see what's available now, because some of the things may be a little unusual. However, they grow in so many areas in the United States and even further. So one of the first things that I like in this time of year is to really prepare for vitamin C. Vitamin C, there's so many sources for vitamin C. One of my favorite is a white pine, the needles of a white pine. And it doesn't have to be white pine. White pine is a longleaf needle. There'll be about 4 or 5 inches long, but there's multiple varieties of pine that will give you your sources of vitamin C. And we have as a first world nation, we have a lot of diseases now, a lot of symptoms that are coming that now are just called, oh, you have a vitamin C deficiency. Well, 100 years ago, that was called scurvy. We had we had issues with teeth, we had issues with eyesight, things like that. That now they just attack those individually and give you something for the symptom, or you have a tooth filled, things like that. They don't approach it from a nutrition level. And wild foods is abundantly available for us to do that. One of the first ones that I like, other than the white pine is probably my number one source. A second source is persimmon leaf specifically, not as much as the fruit as the leaf. Now, this one, I just grabbed this one really quick. This is not a picture of my persimmon trees. I just got this off the internet to show you. You can see the little persimmons in the picture. As a matter of fact, there's a persimmon coming up so that you'll see what the fruit looks like when it's getting ripe. But those leaves, you want to get those leaves in about August. As they start looking a little faded, right before they start turning color, they may get a little bit mottled or spotted, but that's when the vitamin C is going to be at its peak. You can harvest those leaves, lay them out on screens or in trays or even in baskets, just baskets. I buy any big basket I can find at a thrift store to help me with my harvest. But you can harvest those leaves, and the vitamin C is abundant. It's huge. It's a huge source of vitamin C. And one of the reasons I stress a natural source of vitamin C is most vitamin C supplements that you find on in grocery stores or in drugstores, Walmart, places like that, they're made from petroleum. It's not even real vitamin C. It's not the pretty little lemon that you see. Yeah, it's not a pretty lemon. It's petroleum. So if you can find a natural source of vitamin C, number one, it's going to save you money. Number two, you're going to get a better source of vitamin C. So look for this leaf. It's an oblong ovate leaf. That means it comes to a point, slightly oval, but it comes to a point. You'll see the red going down the center. It's a really pretty tree. The branches tend to point downward, so when we were little, we called them sad trees because they just looked sad. They looked droopy, like a hickory, though the branches point downward. So you'll see the fruit. The fruit is wonderful. By the way, I love persimmon. I love persimmon bread. But you want to get the fruit when you think it's almost rotten. It has to be so soft, so mushy, because otherwise, if you get it before it's mushy, it's almost astringent in your mouth. It kind of makes your mouth pucker. So get your sources of vitamin C. A little technical difficulty there. If you'll look at the leaf, you can see that it's ovate. That means oval, but ovate means it would come to a point. So down at the bottom, at the tip of the leaf, you see that it is a little bit pointed. The edges are a little wavy. If you'll look about sort of to the top there, you see some of the leaves that are really wavy, and it's just a pretty leaf. I think it's a beautiful tree. And then hang on, and let me get you the picture of the fruit. And now I'll share my screen.
Also, does it matter the variety of persimmon?
No, it does not. Whether it's a Japanese variety. A Japanese variety fruit is much larger than American. If you make an OK sign, that's about the size of the persimmon that you should see on the screen, maybe a little bit bigger. If they're really juicy and it's a good year for them, and I expect it to be a good year this year, those will come around in October. They are better after the first frost. So no matter what area that you're in, persimmon is a wonderful fruit, a wonderful leaf. The leaf is wonderful for tea. And I love to dry persimmons. They're just sweet, really good source of natural sugar. Some people say there's no difference in sugars. I do tend to feel like natural sugar is a lot better for you. The next thing
is so interesting because I've never used the leaves from our persimmons. I've only ever used the fruit. And of course, we make wine, we make persimmon butter, and we use it in salads and that kind of thing. But that's very good to know that the leaves are useful also. And could I just ask you to clarify with the white pine, you're talking about using the pine needles, right?
Needles. What you'll do, you can see my finger there, right?
Yeah.
I'm making an okay sign. This amount of white pine leaves, fresh pine needles, just like that. That many, just fill up, that many. Put that into a quart jar. You can chop them up if you'd like, and then pour simmering water over those. Put a lid on the jar to hold in the volatile oils. That's where the vitamin C is. Hold in the volatile oils, and then let it cool, let it steep for 3 to 4 hours until it's full. You can drink it hot if you'd like, or you can drink it cold. I kind of like it cold. I've got a green pine cone syrup going right now. That's a wonderful cough medicine, but I flavor teas with it because it's made with sugar. I used maple sugar and a good turbinado sugar for this syrup, but I made a gallon of it because I love it in the wintertime. I give it away to people who just have a tickle a wintertime tickle, maybe from postnasal drip. It's a wonderful cough and sore throat suppressant. So I make that from the needles and the green pine color, not the brown ones. So you may have to wait till next year now. And I'll be glad to send you a picture of that too, of that jar, because it's kind of interesting that you can use that. You can even use those green the green pine cones, and simmer those to candy them, and they are actually edible. So it's just different things that you can make with pine cones to get that vitamin C, to get kids to take it. Compliance is a big issue with a lot of herbal medicine because the medicine doesn't taste good. But when you put it in your food and can make it taste good with seasonings or sweetener, natural sweetener, anything like that, you have a much better chance of having your kids, especially, or an elderly person who is sickly and just doesn't want to eat. When you make it taste good, people will take medicine much easier. I'm technically challenged big time. So
Well, you're not alone.
The next one is bee balm. Bee balm is in a lot of places right now. This one is Monarda, the crimson bee balm. And beautiful flower. It's in a lot of moist places. Doesn't necessarily have to have standing water. But it does like a moist place and usually shady. I've seen it growing in sun just as well, but it usually does have some shade during the day, the red one specifically. But this is a Lamiaceae, but it tastes like an oregano, a little cross between an oregano and basil. So you can use this in soups. This is wonderful in tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, anything where you would use a regular oregano. You can use bee balm. As a matter of fact, it's actually called at times wild oregano, just depending on the variety. There's a purple variety, sort of lavender as well, and it's a fistula. This is Monarda, but it's a bee balm. Wonderful in a garden. You can put that as a pollinator. The bees love it. Insects love it. I don't know a plant, excuse me. I don't know a bug that eats it. However, it is a good attractor plant for the predatory wasps and things like that. That don't really sting humans as much. They will kill, they will attack the bugs and things that are attacking your garden. So make sure you plant pollinators. Foreign worms, yes, exactly. This has a wonderful fragrance.
Those are the things that like demolish your tomatoes or your bell peppers overnight.
Right. I've put this in amongst corn as well, and it seems to repel the corn cutworms, those little green worms that get in your corn. So there's so many things that pollinators will help you with, not just attracting the good insects, but it'll help attract the ones that will get rid of the bad insects as well. Use this again. You can make a tea with this that doesn't taste like a cup of oregano, but it does have a kind of a musky, heady taste, but it's so good for flus, for colds, for sinus, things like that. You can just make a tea with a couple of the the tops, some of the leaves. When you're harvesting it, you can just pop the top off. When I go to harvest flowers like this, where they're all at the top, I'll just take 2 fingers and pop underneath the flower and the top leaf. I just pop that off, and the less you handle it, the prettier it's going to stay, because oils from your skin can cause it to turn brown. So just pop those off, lay them on window screens. I go get window screens from Habitat for about $2 a piece, large window screens or smaller ones when you find them. And that's what I will dry things on, especially greens or flowers, something like that that's got some substance to it. If it's seeds or something like that, you'll have to lay a piece of paper, and I'll buy newsprint for that. I'll lay just a pack of moving paper over in the moving supplies. You just get a whole pack of that, and you'll just lay a piece out, and you can put your pieces that are going to shed seeds. That'll catch the seeds. But as far as drying bee balm, it dries beautifully and it's very fragrant. Once it's dry, put it in a jar and keep the lid on it, because this does have volatile oils. And volatile oils usually have a fragrance, but it's wonderful for helping the flus and the sniffles and things like that. Help especially with the sore throat. I drink bee balm tea quite often in the winter just as a preventive. It's just because it has antiviral properties. You can still drink it daily if you wanted to. And I like to put it with sage or mullein leaf when I am sick, just as a soothing sore throat and chest congestion tea. So bee balm, look for bee balm now. By the way, it does tend to get it'll get a mildew if you wait too late. So you'll want to start looking for it now. It's actually blooming now, and get the leaves as well. So you can get both of those. The next one that I encourage you to look for now is milkweed. Now, a lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to mess with milkweed because I want my monarch butterflies. Milkweed larvae only eat the leaves. So you can get the blossoms. This particular plant I have about 200 that sprang up from one plant that just appeared. So they're fairly easy to propagate. You want the seeds do need to be cold stratified. That means you spread them in the fall. And I make milkweed seed bombs, and I put them everywhere. So I'm spreading the milkweed, helping the monarchs, but it's the larvae when they lay their eggs. It's the larvae that eat the leaves. So if you're thinning out a few of the blossoms, and what you see here is the young stage of the bud, actually the older stage of the bud. Now on the top right, you see they look like little peas. They're about the size of green peas. You can pull those off, and you must parboil any edible milkweed. The ones with purple or lavender blooms are typically edible. Now, verify anything I'm telling you. Make sure you have the right plants. Identification is critical, but especially on this plant, the orange milkweed is not edible. Orange milkweed is not edible. The leaves, the flowers, all of that is not edible. The root can be used as a very good respiratory medicine, but you're still only taking a small amount of that, even when you use the root. And that's the orange. This one, the purple, Asclepias syriaca, is the common milkweed. We got peas there in the top right. There's not a small bud on this one. You can take the small buds and do like a broccoli. They actually look like a little broccoli floret, and I like to dip them in a batter. Yeah, I like to dip them in batter and fry them. But they also saute up really well. And it tastes like green peas. I mean, it really does taste like green peas. Take the buds off. Like I said, pop those off. All milkweed has to be parboiled. So I parboil them for about a minute. I bring my water to a boil, throw in the peas. Like if I've gathered a cup or two of the peas after I've pulled them off, I'll put it in the boiling water, bring it back up to a simmer. By that time or back up to a boil, it's been about a minute for that, and that's all. I'll blanch them immediately, and then I'll lay them out on a baking sheet with a piece of parchment on it, freeze them real quick so then I can just reach in the bag in the wintertime and grab a handful to go in a pasta salad or a chicken salad if you're going to put green peas in your chicken salad. They're wonderful. Love them. I'll take the little ones and parboil them, and then dip them in batter and lay them on that tray on that baking sheet with the parchment and flash freeze those. And then I usually will do it in a pan with a little bit of olive oil and just a pat of butter. But you can deep fry them if you want them, or bake them, or air fry them too. I've had them all those ways, and they're delicious. So that's putting them up for winter. Now, the best thing to me is a syrup with the blossoms. And that syrup can be used in tonic water. Tonic water actually has quinine, just a very small amount, but every little bit helps. So I make sodas. I don't drink Coke or Pepsi, anything like that anymore. I used to be addicted to Diet Coke. Well, I got off of Diet Coke with tonic water and milkweed syrup and a few other syrups. So it can be done. I know it can. I did. And I have that addictive personality, man. If I crave a food, I think I have to have it. But the milkweed you just take those blossoms and you'll pick one or two off of a plant, and then keep going around and just pick one or so off. They have to be boiled as well. You can't have those raw. Nothing milkweed can be raw. So you'll boil those to make a syrup. You make the tea first, and then just follow any simple syrup recipe. That can be equal amounts of liquid and sugar. I tend to make mine a little bit thinner, so I use half as much sugar as I do the tea. So if I have 2 cups of sugar, I'll use 2 cups of tea. After it simmers for about 20 minutes, I'll strain it off. And if I have 2 cups of tea, I'll use 1 cup of sugar. If you want it to get thick like pancake syrup, then go ahead and use 2 cups of syrup, and you just boil that to any simple syrup recipe. You can find simple syrup online, and instead of using plain water, you're just using tea. These can be eaten when they're small shoots, about 6 inches, before the leaves start unfurling, and you would treat those like you would asparagus. So that's usually the key vegetable that people will think about is a green bean or a green bean or an asparagus. So the next one that I want to tell you about that everybody knows about is elderberry. This is what elderberry looks like when it's ripe. Now, this is Sambucus nigra. That's the European elderberry. The native elderberry, the American elderberry, is Sambucus canadensis. Anything that's got the second name canadensis or Americana is North American varieties. So that's a little botany information for you. If you're looking at a botanical name, the Latin name, it'll have 2 words. So your first word is what the plant is in Latin, and then the second word tells more where the location is. So Americana or canadensis happens to be the American elderberry. The Sambucus nigra is the European variety, and it just means blackberry. Ours, the canadensis, will not get this black. I didn't think to pull up a picture of that. They will get a deep, deep, dark red, a maroon color, about the color of, if you see the little arrow to the left there, they're going to get deeper than that, deeper than the color on the stems there. And it's a fallacy. There's a lot of people say, oh, you can't have any stems in your elderberry syrup. Actually, you can. Where I'll cut them is where the last joint is. You see where the Y is, where the berries are. I'll cut them right there. After I pick them, I'll pick the whole umbral, and then when I go to put them in my pot, I'll just clip them, and there'll be some stems that are maybe an inch long. You're going to boil those. The constituents in the stems that are toxic are water soluble. That means you boil it away. So if you have stems in there, if you even have leaves in there, there's actually benefits in the leaves. I wouldn't put the leaves in my syrup simply for flavor. You want to get the deeper, darker berries. But if you do have just a few green berries in them, it's not gonna hurt you at all to have green berries. As a matter of fact, you can make capers from green berries, and that's just a pickled caper. If you like a fish with a lemon piccata sauce or a lemon wine sauce, and you put capers in there, green elderberries are wonderful for a caper. Daisy buds are actually make a great caper as well. I have a picture also. This is the flower right there. You can see it's a composite flower made up of tiny little flowers, florets, or flowers, individual flowers, and each one of those will be a berry. Each one that is pollinated will turn into a berry. And you can see behind it there to the top left, that those little tiny green berries right there. Even though the plant will have completely ripe berries on it, it'll still pop out a flower or two, a flower composite like this. So you'll find both stages on the same plant. So just be aware of that's an indicator. When you find this beautiful white creamy flower in the springtime, you can use those. The flowers themselves are wonderful as a antihistamine. I put it with goldenrod, one of my favorite antihistamines. You can make beautiful fritters, wonderful, batter fried fritters, pancakes. You can make elderflower syrup as well for pancakes. Makes a wonderful wine. But you can use many parts of this plant, not just the berries. And by the way, I said goldenrod too. Goldenrod, I would put both of these together. Goldenrod is actually edible. You can take those new leaves on goldenrod and saute those up. They're quite delicious. I like to put a little butter in it, as I've said before. But that's two different crops that you can get from the elderberry.
Suzanne, I have made the elderberry fritters with the flowers, and they were really good.
They are. If you do like a pancake batter, I like it just a little bit sweeter with less syrup. But you can do the pancake batter on those, or even with less sugar if you want to do just just make your pancake batter with less sugar, and then you're able to use the syrup that way. Either way, they're wonderful. And you can just take that whole flour, clip it off, clip it kind of close as you can, and dip it down in your pancake batter and fry that whole thing. You're cooking the stem because it's water soluble. Even though you're putting in oil, it still gets rid of the cyanide. But yeah, they're just wonderful. By the way, people are concerned about which poke is a great one that's coming up. The berries are edible, but there's more toxicity cases with elderberry than there are poke. There's about 100 a year. People misuse them. They take too much. You do need to limit your elderberry. If you're taking an elderberry syrup, just on the medicinal side, if you're taking an elderberry syrup, you do need to take a break with it. So you wouldn't want to take elderberry every single day. Take it maybe 3 weeks. Take a week off, 5 days, take 2 days off, whatever works for you. If you're making popsicles for the kids, I make an elderberry fruit leather with my apples as a base, and I'll flavor with elderberries, and my grandson loves it. So there's a lot of ways to use elderberry other than just taking a spoonful of syrup and you're getting your daily immune enhancement. There's immunomodularies and there's immunoenhancers. So just be aware that elderberry is an enhancer, and anybody with an autoimmune issues might not want to take elderberry. There are other things that you can take that will just modulate and will just support. They won't push your immune system. So if you have an autoimmune issue, just be aware that you don't want to take elderberry. Okay,
Right,
so the next one.
what I tell my patients too.
Yeah, and you need to take your breaks with elderberry. You don't want your immune system to become dependent on it, but there are certain modulatory herbs that you can use to benefit your entire system. All right, the next one, and I find this one just so interesting, is crabapple. You'll find crabapple trees all over the place. They've been planted. They'll be in parks, and you'll see all this beautiful fruit on these trees. And people will say, "No, save those for the birds." Well, the birds won't eat them all. The birds won't eat all of the. They'll peck them maybe once. They'll come back and peck them again, but they won't eat all of the crab apples. You'll see them laying on the ground, and they just go to waste. So if you're on the underside of the tree, save the top ones if you want to. You can't reach those anyway, usually. But get under the tree and pull from the bottom, and you can harvest crab apples in a lot of different parks and wild spaces that may have been let go in a lot of landscapes, like department stores or strip malls, things like that. Just make sure they haven't been sprayed. That's the issue. Now, I find I have two neighbors. I'm very fortunate that have these beautiful large crabapple trees, and they don't use the fruit. And I go and get buckets of it. I happen to have 11 apple trees, so I don't get a lot. I just like to get a little because I like the flavor of crab apples. They're tart, they're sweet, they're wonderful. But they are actually a great fruit right now. They'll be coming up about August. Certain varieties will be in September, even as late as October. They'll start falling off the tree after the first or second frost. And then they will get mushy as well. Some fruit is better after a frost, but crabapple happens to be one that is not as good after a frost. And I like to talk about this one because people will find it there. If you're looking in parks and things and you see these beautiful crab apples that are planted for their pretty blossoms in the spring, that's great. That's where they are. You can use those blossoms to make a flower syrup. Those blossoms have a little bit of a bitter flavor to them, a bitter aftertaste, which makes them great for digestion. So you can take the blossoms of a crabapple tree, make the syrup with them, or just sprinkle them in a salad, so that you get that salivation going in your mouth, and get your digestion started. If you have, if you can pull the leaves, get the leaves and put them in a vinegar, or put them in a not necessarily a vinegar, but you can also make a tincture, or you can make a syrup and use that for nausea, for an upset stomach. Apple leaf is very good for upset stomach. Peach leaf, and that's just your regular peaches, but don't get them if they've been sprayed. But if you have a backyard peach tree and you've only sprayed it with something like neem or garlic or what have you, by all means, you can use those leaves as well. The very young leaves can be used in salads and things. I tend to steam them just a little bit, just to make them a little bit more meristematic. That means tasty bits. So if they are a little tough to your tooth, you can steam them just a little bit and add them to a salad. Information like that is critical in survival situations. So if you're looking for anything to eat, the apple trees, the crabapple tree leaves could be steamed or boiled and eaten because they're highly nutritious.
Now, when you say upset stomach and using peach leaves, I knew they could be used for like constipation. Are you talking about for the opposite end of the spectrum too? Like if you had loose stools or something?
For nausea, more for nausea. If you're going to use them for elimination, peach can be used for diarrhea, and apple can be used for diarrhea as well. They're not on the laxative side. So just be aware that it's good for the nausea part, especially. But if you tend to be either have diarrhea or have more constipation, they can also be leveling as well. So it just depends on your constitution. One I didn't get a picture of, let me go back here. One I did not get a picture of is autumn olive. Autumn olive is already getting ripe. I could see if I could find a picture, I can send you one. Autumn olive is a highly invasive Elaeagnus umbellata. Wonderful, wonderful berry when it's fully ripe. By late August, they will be really ripe. Wonderful. I mean, they will just be hanging on these trees. The birds love them because it's a real tiny little berry about the size of your little finger, a little pinky. Very prolific. Don't plant it. Please do not plant this plant. I've seen an empty 5-acre field had one tree on the edge of it that I was picking from. And I just walked back out of the field, came back there a couple years later, maybe I was back in that area. That field was covered in about 10-foot tall. Wow. They are highly prolific. And they have thorns, so you don't want to propagate that. If you have it and it's there, by all means use it. I use this is the plant that I make my ketchup from. I don't eat tomatoes because cause an inflammation. I have some broken bones that have over the years, I've had this accident or that, and I have inflammation, arthritis in some of those joints. And when I eat too many tomatoes, oh man, I can't walk, I have a hard time walking, I have a hard time riding or ripping anything. So my ketchup, my barbecue sauce, things like that, because I don't eat tomatoes, I make it from from autumn olive or autumn berry. Some people call it autumn berry. But it's a delicious berry, 18 times the lycopene of tomatoes. So it's very good for men's health. Great for women as well. Women need lycopene too, but men specifically need lycopene, and it's 18 times more than a domestic tomato. So, and they're delicious. They're sweet. They have just a slight astringency when they're not fully ripe. So you want them where they're so full of juice that when you mash them, they're almost soft, not soft, but you can feel the severity a little bit. But you just put your hand up on that and you can just tickle those berries off, hold your bucket under it, and you can have a 5-gallon bucket of those in an hour. Doesn't take long. I'll lay a sheet out underneath it and just stand there and do this. Just grab enough and pull those and put it into a bucket, lay my sheet back out and do just all the way down the branches. And when you see them, you'll never unsee them because they're so pretty in August. The leaf, any Elaeagnus will have a silvery leaf on the back. It will be a nice pretty green on the front, little leaves, and they tend to flutter in a breeze. So it makes them easy to recognize. You've probably seen them in multiple states. You'll find them and people don't know what they are because it has taken over that fast. But it's coming up. Don't get them right now because they're, like I say, they're very astringent when they're not ripe, but highly, highly nutritious. It's sweet. I make fruit leathers for my grandson. Loves them. And I use an apple base because of the pectin. It does have a little seed in it. When you cook it, the seed will get tough, so you'll have to strain those out. But if you're going to eat them raw, the seed is very soft, so it doesn't feel like a seed in your mouth. So you can just chow down on them. But I use them in pemmican. I use them for fruit leathers. I make jam out of it, especially like an apple butter with autumn olives is wonderful with a lot of, I like clove. Some people don't like clove, but I love clove. So I'll put cloves and cinnamon in it or spice bush. That's a native, that tastes a lot like cinnamon and clove. So yeah, those are wonderful. So anyway, that's 6. I gave you 6 plants to look for around.
Well, I'm sure our listeners will appreciate all the info you have to share.
Thank you. I hope so.
I'm going to ask you real quick, for someone who is new to foraging, what are some tools or things they might want to purchase?
Sure. First thing, get you a very good ID book. Samuel Thayer, Newcomb's Wildflower Guide, NEWCOMB, Samuel Thayer, THAYER. Both of those authors have wonderful books, and they do them by area. So, like the Ohio Valley, or the Southeast region, or the Northwest, Pacific Northwest, whatever area you're in, they have a guide for you that has the wildflowers that are available. They tell you if they're edible or not edible. And sometimes non-edible things will just not be tasty. They'll just not be meristematic. They won't taste good. But it'll help you ID that plant. Never, ever, ever go by an app. If you use an app, okay, just be aware that that's somebody taking a guess. That's not an authority. So they're just telling you, oh, that might be something, and it's nowhere near. So verify that what that plant app tells you. And I know people who will say who plant out very accurate. I'm here to tell you they are not. If you don't know what the plant looks like, how do you know it's accurate? They're not accurate. They're not accurate at all. This is voluntarily, the information is volunteered to those apps. That doesn't mean it's accurate. So verify that plant. I'll go on Google and look for the real plant, compare it to what you think it is. And that means you look at the edges of the leaf, on the outside, look at the way the fruit hangs, all kinds of things like that. A little bit of help is a botany book, Botany in a Day by Thomas Elpel. Highly recommend that book because it makes it easy. It's got a really good system to make that easy for you to identify. Then, after your identification, I would recommend you get something like a hoary hoary. It's a digger. It's got a point on it. As a matter of fact, I've got a picture of a hoary hoary. Hang on just a second. Let me get you back over to that. You can see this when you see it, you'll say, oh yeah, I've got one of those. So let's see. Hang on just a second. We'll let that go here. All right, this is a hoary hoary. It's a little digger. Sometimes it'll have a point at the top. Sometimes, see? Sometimes it'll have the little notch that'll help you dig things if you're looking for tubers or roots or anything like that. This little hoary hoary is a great find. Keep it in your backpack. You can just put it on your side. A lot of them will come with a sling thing that you can put on your belt. But I take one with me all the time. I keep one in my vehicle. I put a separate one in my backpack for hiking. When I'm in the forest hiking, I can keep that with me. Another thing that I would suggest is a backpack shovel. So if you have a backpack shovel and you're taking your backpack with you and you run up on something, and do this in places that you can dig, that you're allowed to dig. If they catch you on federal lands, it's a pretty hefty fine. So be aware of that you can't dig things on federal lands or state parks, things like that. But if you have permission to dig, these little things are great. And be aware that if you're in a public space, somebody will come along behind you and get more. So take a minimal amount. I'm not going to say only take 10%, but just be aware that somebody else may come along and take a bunch. So if you can take one and propagate it on your own property, great. If it's not an invasive, be aware that some things are highly invasive. And then let's see, I have clippers that, and all of these, by the way, are on my website, and that's Simple Homestead Living. So I have this clipper as well. I keep these in my vehicle, in the toolbox. Little clippers like that at the bottom, and then longer clippers for branches or things that are hard to reach. I just dedicate one to my vehicle. If you don't want to do that and you just want to use the one that you have, that you use from your tool shed, perfectly fine. But it's nice to collect one or two things at a time and set those aside for when you're driving and you hit a park that you can dig things. So
Right.
homestead.
Well,
And
that's
all of these
awesome.
things, yeah, all of those tools are available. I am an Amazon affiliate, so if you're interested, you can go there and look at them on my website and order what I like to use. And then my book is available as well. I have that here. This is a picture of my book. Simple Homestead Living is the website. Wild Things for Beyond the Garden Gate. And that's the cover of my Wild Foods book. 300 recipes, 400 pages, 200 pictures, and 100 plants that are easy to identify.
Now, are the ones that you mentioned today, the white pine, bee balm, elderberry, crabapple, are those recipes and things in your book?
There are recipes for each of those in the book.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, well, I think we have a good episode here. Also, if you want to follow Suzanne on Instagram, Facebook, you can also go to her website, like she said, simplehomesteadliving.com. And she also has a Greenie mentor program that she is just starting, and it's like a once a month.
It's once a week.
Recording, right? Or once a week, excuse me.
Yeah. On Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can go to my Patreon, which is patreon.com/simplehomesteadliving, and sign up for that. I try to keep the fee as low as possible. I want to share the information. And we really deep dive on one plant per week. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Suzanne. As always, we really appreciate your information, your enthusiasm. We look forward to having you back one more time on the podcast, at least for the foreseeable future. And we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. Join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram for the latest updates. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website for upcoming events. For sponsorship opportunities, reach out to us through our website. See you next time.